coming up on Mic'd Up.
I had a $140,000 a year job. I was a very good salesperson, and that was a lot. 45. I quit that job when I was 27 years old, did my own company, and it was really the same exact job that I left. I just did it for myself, turned that 140 a year into a few million a year, and then eventually sold that company to a private equity-backed competitor for a big multiple of that in the double digits. Okay. And I never stopped doing the same job.
Welcome to Mic'd Up. I'm your host, Mike DeChocho, and on my show, I interview entrepreneurs, award-winning authors, entertainers, business leaders, athletes, and other talented individuals who I personally invited to join the show to inspire you to be brave and bold in pursuit of your dreams. If you dig this show and are looking for more inspiring content from incredible people, click the subscribe button and you'll be notified of each episode release. Subscribing is free and it means the world to me that you've chosen my channel to tune into. You can give a gift of thanks and appreciation for providing this content to you. Simply visit patreon.com/mikedup, MIKEDUP. Any amount is greatly appreciated and totally unexpected. I welcome you to connect with me on my other social channels as well. All links are clickable in the description to make it even easier to connect. Thank you again for tuning into Mic'd Up. Enjoy the show. Our guest today is a total rockstar entrepreneur and investor with a laser-focused passion for launching businesses in the insurance, event planning, real estate, and food industries, as well as the venture capital space. Although his football playing days as a scholarship athlete at Notre Dame and in the Big Ten at Northwestern U are well behind him, he carries that same toughness that he displayed on the gridiron to business. He's an active philanthropist in ministry, youth athletics, advocacy programs, and the promotion of the arts. Welcome to the show, the founder of Glencrest Global, John Cerasani.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here. And thanks for mentioning that. I want you to just follow me around and introduce me to everyone if I get that introduction.
I'm your hype man, dude. Just bring me around town. Where are we going next?
I'm Chuck D and your Flavor Flav. There we go.
We were just talking about Ed Milet off camera. Why don't we get a jet and I'll just follow you around and we'll do that. I love it, brother. Hey, I want everybody to know that you're active on Instagram, and I'm going to put that in the show notes. People don't have to go ahead and try to spell your name or do any of that. It's clickable in the show notes, guys. Also, his link tree will be in the show notes. So that's where you can go to all his different platforms where you can find John and see what he's up to. And actually, before we get totally into that, what I feel today is going to be a masterclass. We're going to talk about venture capital, startups, investing. I'd really love the audience to get to know you. And this is the first time you and I met. So very much I'm getting to know a little bit more of your backstory. I've done a little homework on you. But I want to know, did you have this interest in entrepreneurship from a young age? Was there maybe a mentor in your life at that point? Or how did you fall in love with launching all these startups? Where did that come from?
I did. I always just had this entrepreneurial spirit in me. And no one else in my family really has. I have a very great, outstanding family, of outstanding background. But a lot of teachers, a lot of coaches, police officer, high school principal, people that really have been more on the public service side. I just always had this passion for following the dollars. I remember at a young age doing things like lemonade stands. And then when I got older, hosted poker tournaments at my house. And this is a long time ago before it was even a popular thing to do.
Yeah. Making a little extra scratch, doing something that's fun for you. Was there maybe it doesn't have to be someone in the family, but like a Walt Disney or a fill in the blank entrepreneur that maybe just sparked your interest as a kid? Did you see someone like that made you go, I can do that?
Yeah, I think I always had a little bit of envy towards Ray Kroc. My grandparents, I'd go visit them in Des Plaines, Illinois, and they had a condo right across the street from, I think it was store number 1 or store number 3, whatever they called it, one of the original McDonald's. It's actually featured in the movie The Founder. They talk about it in there a little bit.
I love that movie. I love that. A lot of people hate Ray Kroc. Look, guys, after the McDonald's brothers were trying to basically stomp him out and give him a small deal, he got smart. And then did he handle everything amicably? No, of course he didn't. But I do have a ton of respect for the fact that he made McDonald's what it is today.
And what a great depiction in that movie. They didn't make him look like a great guy. They made him look for hopefully exactly what he was. And anyway, pretty cool.
Yeah, so you kind of had that Ray Kroc thing. So I didn't even know who he was until the movie came out. I always thought it was just the McDonald's brothers because of the name. But So I think that's interesting. Now, do you find yourself reading or tuning into podcasts? Like, where are you getting some of your self-talk, the positivity in your brain? Where's that coming from?
I'm not a huge podcast guy until recently. David Meltzer is somebody I've built a relationship over recently and followed him quite a bit. But I'll tell you what, there wasn't really podcasts. I'm 45 years old. There wasn't really podcasts when I was in high school and college, not yet at least, right? But I read a few really good books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I remember having a huge influence on my life. I think I read that when I was probably about 22, 23 years old. That definitely impacted me.
Yeah. That's the Robert Kiyosaki book, if anyone wants to check that out. That was a great book. Yeah.
Yeah. And he draws parallels in that book between his two dads. He had a stepdad that was doing business. That was the rich dad. And then he called it the poor dad that was working for the man. And I was able to draw parallels to my life in that book a little bit. And it was pretty eye-opening. Glad I read that book. Later in life, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I actually have copies all over my house. Right here. Actually, I give them to people whenever I think they need it. I say, okay, you know what? Read this book, not only for your personal life, but also from a business standpoint. So I would say Dale Carnegie and Kiyosaki are big influencers for me.
That's awesome, man. What I love about you is instead of it being all about you, like you just said, you have these books. When you meet someone, you see that they have that glimmer of hope in their eye that they want to be an entrepreneur or get into investing or maybe flip their first duplex or something. You want to give them some information to help them out, right? What about that investor side of you? I mean, venture capital to me is such an interesting thing, but I feel like you need the knowledge of it. You don't just get into it and be successful without the knowledge of it, but then you also have to have like that crazy it factor to really make it work. So where did that come from? Was that just something you learned over time?
Yeah, I had an exit from an insurance company that I built that turned out pretty well for me back in 2015. And part of the deal was that I had to stay employed at that organization that bought mine. It was a private equity-backed organization. Part of the deal was I had to work there for 5 years. Once that came to a conclusion, my stock prices and the money I made from the sale was significant enough to not really need to work anymore. So what I wanted to do was kind of take my entrepreneurial background and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to get an early stage venture capital with these startup organizations, things that are just early stage. Sometimes they're just an idea. Other times they're just getting going with maybe a handful of clients. I'm in a position where I could infuse capital into these companies, but I'm also in a position where I could offer some advice and some guidance. So finding those types of opportunities where it's a good fit is really where I've succeeded.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it sounds like I mentioned you need knowledge, kind of that it factor. The other thing you need is money. Right. So talk about whether it's in real estate or a business that you're looking to invest in. Someone listening right now, they're kind of early on in their journey and maybe they have the knowledge because they're reading, they're listening to the right shows and they're filling up their think tank, but maybe they don't have the money to invest. What do you recommend there? Is it just save up until you have enough to make a deal, or do you start small and build yourself up?
Yeah, it really depends on the nature of the business. If it's a venture capital type of play where you're looking for an investor, and maybe even early stage venture capitalist, or even an angel investor where they're going to say, hey, here's a $25,000 check, or maybe even smaller. I don't do stuff like that, but those types of guys exist. You have to have an idea that's going to be big to attract those types of investors. It doesn't have to be a sure thing, but it has to be big because they know they're not going to see their money for 5, 6, 7, maybe more, or never, or we find out it goes to zero 5 months later. That's happened.
Yeah. They're not looking to take 25 grand and turn it into 100 grand. These guys are looking to take a business idea that's scalable into mostly 7 figures and bigger, right? So you're not going to really get their interest unless it's a big idea that they can see it working, or there's some track record of success, or it's similar to something else that worked. And they said, if we could take this strategy and formula and apply it here, we got something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's absolutely correct. And you'll see some venture capital firms that will tout, it's a feather in their cap. Hey, we were early on LinkedIn. We were early on Twitter. We were early on Facebook, or we were early on Uber. That's awesome. But if you have a business, though, it doesn't have to be a venture capital play. I had a call the other day from a friend of mine asking me about her business that she's thinking about starting, and she was going to go the venture capital route. I kind of talked her out of it for everything I just said. It wasn't that kind of idea, but it was an idea that she's probably going to make 300, 400, 500 grand personally for a long time because it's going to be attracting clients. Now she needs a little bit of capital that she doesn't have right now to get off the ground. Okay. Well, how much do you need? She needs 60 grand. All right. Well, don't structure this as a venture capital play. Structure it. If you got family and friends, do a family and friends round and say, okay, you know what? For every 25 grand you give me, I'm going to give you 40 grand back in 12 to 18 months. If the numbers hit this, if the numbers are below that, I'm still going to give you your principal back because I don't want to right now. That's what I'm asking you for the money. I have money in my house or I have money in my 401k to pull it from to do that. And you have to limit that downside for the investor if you're limiting the upside too. You know what I mean? Otherwise, hey, listen, you're going to be making 400, 500 grand personally each year. Do you really want to give up this big chunk of your company for only 60 grand? That's very short term for you. So there's a few different ways to look at it. Unfortunately, people don't always have even any capital or any equity in their home or any access to their 401k, especially young entrepreneurs. And that poses an issue.
They kind of need to give up something because they don't have anything to give, right? They don't have as strong of a stance. I think that's a beautiful thing you just said because, I've been doing the show for a couple of years now, and you're the second person I've had on. And actually, it's funny enough, recently I interviewed Lindsay Stencil. She's into venture capital and works for a ton of different companies, and she's a venture capital attorney. She was on just a couple of weeks ago, and I learned a lot from her. And funny enough, after I interviewed her and I'm interviewing you today, and in between those two moments, I actually had a company reach out to me that's interested in me pitching to them for some capital to take my company, Social Chameleon, where it's at and to where it can go. But I very much am like, hey, I bootstrapped everything to this point, and we are like really close to just kicking that door into leveling up. And I'd have to be very careful to say what I'm willing to give up in it because I know what we can do without that. And if I'm looking for, like you said, and it's the reason I'm telling my part of the story here is I want people to listen to this and apply it to yourself, is if you need maybe, like you said, the 30, 50, 60 grand, maybe do a round or two, like you said, outside of giving up a lot of the company. I think that's really, really wise. Know what you want before you ask for it is so important.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Mike, your situation is interesting because I'll also come across deals where we know they might only be raising, say, not only, but like say they're raising 600 grand and they have a $10 million valuation on their company. Well, I know this person is worth 10, 15, $20 million themselves that's doing it because maybe they're an actor or actress, and you could kind of just look into what they've made in their life. That person might still be willing to give that small percentage of their company up, even though they could self-fund it, because they're looking for strategic people to come in and be part of this. Hey, I got a $200 million idea. My valuation right now that I'm fictitiously putting on this is going to be called 10 million because I think, even though we don't have any revenue now, where it's going to go. But you know what? I'm going to give up 10% of the company or 5% of the company with strategic people because we don't just want dumb money. We want that network. So your 100 grand that you put in towards that 6, hopefully I turn it into 2 million one day.
And that's really what I'm looking at personally is like, you don't know what you don't know. So get that help from the strategic partners. And I am willing to have that conversation because I know that I only know what I've learned so far, which has been 4 or 5 years in business. And I've done it really the school of hard knocks, kind of learning as you go and apply, hit your head against the wall. Okay, don't go that way. Go through the door. I get it now. And that takes a lot of bumps and bruises and time. Yeah. But if someone was like, hey, we've done similar businesses like this, we've worked with similar clients like you, and we can get you from here to here. And it's like, oh, I'm willing to give that up so you can then get me through this a lot smoother and with that expertise. And I wanted to use that as a segue too, John, and talk about Glencrest Global. That's what you're operating now. You're the founder of that company. So obviously all your life experiences kind of brought you into this moment where you're able to create this company. And I'd love you to tell us more what Glencrest does and kind of what separates you guys from the competition.
Typically earlier stage, but also middle stage venture capital. It's my company with my money. We don't take limited partners from outside funds. I have a 16-person advisory team that assists on our projects, and people have different areas of expertise. We got somebody in healthcare and pharmaceutical, Aaron, who's a mergers and acquisitions lawyer. We have, Paul, who's an attorney, but also has been doing early stage venture capital for decades. Akshay is a technology guy. So we really stretch through that. And then ultimately it comes to me making the decision. And listening to the advice and the advisement, I guess you should say, from the people that are relevant to whatever's being pitched. And it's kind of what you said earlier, Mike. To do it, you need capital in the first place, right? So I was in this position where it's like, okay, I have this capital. I could all give it to Merrill Lynch or UBS or, whomever, JP Morgan. And I give each of them a little bit of money, actually. UBS, if he's listening, he gets more than a little bit and he knows it. But anyway, what purpose do I have, though? If that money is just sitting over there and I'm passive and we have our quarterly or monthly meetings and talk about how the investments are doing, okay, great. That's awesome. And that's important for wealth management. But gosh, I'm in this position where, hey, I don't want to work 60 or 70 hours a week anymore. I have a 13-year-old son. How could I do things that I think are fun and interesting, engage with companies that I think are fun and interesting, and also find ones that I could bring something to the table besides just the money, helping with that guidance. And I'll tell you something, like you said something earlier. What did you say? Show me how to walk through the door instead of walk through the wall. I'm going to steal that. That's pretty darn good. If that's a cliche that's been out there, I haven't heard it before.
I don't know. It just kind of, I visualized that. That was kind of summary of 4 or 5 years of business. Yeah.
I like it. But the other value on top of that becomes your network. Okay. So in my business or in anybody's business, is there the expansion of your personal network going to be relevant? And maybe, Mike, you have a great network and I have a great network.
Right.
And maybe there's a little bit of overlap, but 7/8 of it is not going to be. You know what I mean? I think that's huge, and especially depending on the business, but a lot of businesses that's exponentially relevant.
They always say your network is your net worth. I do believe it. I mean, now I've had over 120 guests, including yourself, that I've learned so much from. Literally, I'm like a fly in the wall for my own interviews because I could go back. It's all recorded content. I can learn it all over again. And I love going back usually months after the release of each episode because I kind of forget all the details of what we talked about. And I will re-listen to this again 6 months from now. It's going to help me. I'm going to go, oh yeah, I'm hitting my head against the wall again. Go through the door. Like I'm going to hear these different things and remember these little nuances that we talk about. That I think that's the thing in life is we learn so many great things. We read a lot of books. I hope people are reading books and like increasing their think. But then, time in life happens and all of a sudden we get a little bit separated from it. And the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you mentioned that book. I've read it. I'm going to go back and read it again because it's a reminder that there's so many principles in there that we can forget. And then you just go back and you get strong with it. It's like playing an instrument. You don't play it once and then all of a sudden you're like the best at it. You have to, every day in business, you have to do these little things. Discipline is such an important key behind it. And that's what I love about David Meltzer is he talks about the discipline and how when he lost everything, he was able to get it back because he knew the system that he built to get it all in the first place.
Yeah, you know what? You said something really important there, how you need to go back and read this stuff every once in a while. And I'll slam your point home. I wrote a book. I'm not here to promote my book or anything, but I actually...
Well, let's do it because I didn't...
I'm not here to promote it, but I wrote a book on entrepreneurship, why you shouldn't work for someone else, or how if you're working for someone else to leave and work on your own, okay? And start your own business. And it's really a step-by-step guide and helping you evaluate if that's right for you. It's called Paid Training. It's on Amazon.
Cool.
But honestly, I'm not even trying to promote that. What I wanted to do here, I wrote this in 2011. Okay. I was like this with my insurance company going up, up, up. I had worked back in 2004 for a much, much larger competitor. Okay. Now, once I became my own boss, all right, and I did this corporation was still way bigger than mine. All right. They were still way bigger. I was never going to be them. That's a household name that people would know. Okay. There was no way I was ever going to get there.
Right. Not in 100 years, maybe. Right.
Exactly. Well, yeah. You know what? You're right. Maybe I would have eventually. But I sold the company, so we'll never know. Gosh, thanks, Mike. Now I was feeling good about that sale. But like in industry outings and when I'd bump into old friends at a bar or at a Cubs game or wherever, there was still like, they thought they were better than me because they worked for this company, because they worked in corporate America at this insurance giant.
Right.
I know what their personal wealth was. I know what they're making each year. I know what their lives are like at work, probably most importantly out of those points. But who is your little company, Northwest Comprehensive? You know what I mean? And anyway, I'm so glad I wrote that book when I did. That I didn't sell my company until 2015. I'm so glad I wrote that book in 2011 because I had this energy in there where I had still kind of had this chip on my shoulder, like I had something to prove. Okay. Now here we are 11 years later. I sold my company to a private equity backed competitor. And I'm in kind of just this other a little sailing into the sunset kind of thing right now with other priorities.
Everything's cool. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I reflect on that book to this day. I'll go back and I'll read a chapter and I'm like, oh shoot, I said that.
No, it is good. A lot of times I think we discredit ourselves, and I said things in the show. I go back and hear and I go, man, that's really good. Where did I pull that one from? And reading your own book, it's like, yeah, that was really good. But I think it shows that we have these flow. Like sometimes we're at the peak confidence and we say something and it's feeling good. And then there could be a moment when we have something going on personally where we find ourselves and we have to kind of it's kind of cool. You go back, you can lift yourself back up a little bit. Something, I don't know if you were going there with your point, and I wanted to kind of hit on it, and then we're going to get to a quick break, and then we'll hammer the show home. But you were talking about kind of even though you were a smaller company in the big space of financial planning and all that stuff, and you got the Merrill Lynch's and all these big companies that you're talking about, you were running your own ship, right? You were the pilot of this thing. And so for you could be making, I'm just going to make up a number, $500,000. Like someone's their own business entrepreneur making $500,000. But you could be making $850 working at some other company. But if your life stinks because you have no family time, your quality of life stinks, you're hanging out people you can't stand, and you're miserable, a lot of times the better play is to run the thing that you love and you're passionate about. Those are big numbers. I've heard Gary Vee even say, what if you're Susie and you're an artist, you sell your paintings online and you make $50,000 a year, but that's absolutely what you love to do. You can be a success in doing that, where you could be making 100 working for a company that you hate yourself, you hate the company, you hate the people you're with, and you're miserable. Your quality of life is just garbage, but yeah, you have a little bit extra. And most of the time, someone making 50 or making 100, if you just tweak your lifestyle and play the game differently, you can actually be in the same position. Because there's people that have $100,000 income, they're broke, and there's people that make 60 and they're actually going on to Disney every year. It's just how you play the game. It's life is literally a game where we all have these the chips look the same and the dollar bills are all kind of the same, but the way we get around the board is really our own choice. That's what makes life so exciting. But it's also very difficult to be highly successful. And so lean into those who've done it, get the coaching, read the books, do all the stuff. But the thing I know, and I know I'm talking way too much here, I want to hear more from you. All of it sounds great and looks great, but you have to put in the work and be disciplined. And you've done that. You're not successful the way you've been by just throwing a couple darts at the dartboard and hitting. You actually done all the work. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back with John Cerasani. Guys, don't go anywhere. We got something really cool I'm going to bring up. I don't think he knows it's coming. Once we come back with John, I'm going to hit him with a little curveball here. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back in 2 quick minutes. Hey guys, it's Mike. I'd like to give a proper shout out to Navigator Bookkeeping. Look, for a long time, I ran my business without really understanding the full financial picture. I used my gut and my bank account balance to make decisions, which led to some poor choices and constant stress over my business's finances. I knew something needed to change. At the beginning of 2021, I made a decision that helped pave a more clear path for my business. I started working with Navigator Bookkeeping. Since then, my bookkeeping has been handled for me. I now understand the full financial story of my business, making important financial decisions much easier now, and it helps me plan for where my business is going. I highly recommend giving Navigator Bookkeeping an opportunity to help your business. Check them out at navigatingyourbooks.com. Again, that's navigatingyourbooks.com. It's time to know the full financial story of your business. Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you, and that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight, and Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, We'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. All right, guys, we're back in action with John. You guys can connect with him on social media. I have his link tree in there. He's active on Instagram. Go hit up his page. Check out his content. He's really putting a lot of great information out into the world. He's taking time out of his day to be here with us so he can educate us on so many cool things he's doing in business, venture capital, the insurance side of things. He's written a book that he's not plugging that I want him to plug a little bit more because there's some really cool information in there. And here's the thing. I teased it at the beginning, right when we took that break. There's something cool that he's working on right now. It's actually, he's not only making big moves in real estate and venture capital, but he's also working right now with Aaron Rodgers. That's a 2 years in a row MVP in the NFL. He's hanging out with Aaron Rodgers. Tell us what you're doing. It's like this IMDb-like sports platform. Can you give us a scoop?
Yeah, thank you. I'm more than happy to talk about this. This is one of my first investments. When I got out of insurance and went into the venture capital space, like I said, I wanted to be involved in things that are interesting. Well, a lot of people know I played football at Notre Dame and Northwestern in college. They just kind of assume that I have an interest in sports, which I do. Hooked up with a gentleman who is now a really good friend of mine named Ryan Rotman, actor in Hollywood, and he's been in a bunch of stuff. And anyway, I'm on the phone with him. He's telling me about this company that he has. And everyone in LA all knows IMDb, and most people across the country, I think, know it at this point. And Amazon bought it, and it's worth like $3.5 billion right now.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it's about the verification of an actor. All right. Oh, I was in this commercial in 2002. Okay, you go to IMDb and verify if it's true.
Mm-hmm.
This does not exist in sports. If I told you right now, Mike, that I played for the Cowboys in 2001, which I could have, by the way, I'm just kidding, I'd be lying to you. You wouldn't be able to verify this. Okay.
Right. Unless you actually, like a lot of times guys are practice squad guys, or they came in and they were on the roster for one game, but they didn't make a catch. So now they're not, or linemen. How the heck do you track linemen? Because they're not making stats at all. So half the time the stuff's not reported, right?
Well, right. And exactly. What if I said, yeah, I played for the Cowboys and I also started this charity and I also finished my career on the Rams. You know how many different sites you would have to go to Google? You'd go to CBS Sports, Yahoo. You'd have to go all over the place. So this company is called OSDB, Online Sports Database. All right. OSDBsports.com, OSDB Sports or it's just OSDB on Instagram. Anyhow, Ryan Rotman came up with this idea because he's in that Hollywood scene and sees actors that are kind of full of it, and everyone kind of goes to IMDb to verify if people are telling the truth or not. It's a very LA thing. Okay. Now IMDb has grown into many different facets. Okay. Why doesn't this exist in sports? Well, he's good buddies just randomly, because anyone that knows about Aaron Rodgers, he went to Cal for college. Ryan and Aaron are around the same age. Ryan's smart enough to realize that, hey, to get this thing off the ground, I need someone big on this. Well, he's already buddies with Aaron Rodgers, asks Aaron about the idea. And I quote, Aaron says, "Holy crap, I'm going to get involved. And by the way, I think I'm going to make more money on this than I ever did in the NFL when it's all said and done."
It's incredible.
Hopefully that all happens. So Aaron and Ryan had started the company. Another guy named Nate Raby, who is also heavily involved as the third founder. He has a venture capital fund actually out of Orange County called RX3. Awesome guy. And actually one of my close colleagues as well now. When they got to the point where they started looking for outside investors, I had just gotten off the ground with Glencrest Global, had a little bit of a network, but it was really kind of more insurance related and just whatever. Got in touch. At first glance, I'm on the phone with Ryan. He's like, yeah, me and Aaron Rodgers are buddies. We started this company. And hey, why don't you come on out? We're going to this party with A, B, and C. And they're all like different celebrities. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy's full of it. Well, lo and behold, I fly out there. And sure enough, everything about it was true. And we're hanging out with, I'm not going to say the names, but people we would all know. That was coming up on 2 years now. And we're getting off the ground. We're about to do a big Series A round right now. And really expect this to be a household name over the next, hopefully about 12 to 36 month range.
That's awesome, man. I think it is great. I mean, sports are obviously like statistics driven and database driven, but even more importantly, so I have an uncle who actually, he's out in Sherman Oaks and he works on major motion pictures, different, either Sony or Warner Brothers, whoever the picture's with. And I've gone out to visit him before, and I always check out his IMDb. Being that he's in like the music, he's behind the big board recording the orchestral music that you're going to hear in like the soundtrack. And a lot of times when he's working on a movie, it's still green screened. Like he was working on Planet of the Apes, and he's basically seeing people run around the studio with tennis balls on them, that whole thing. And he's recording the music for all that. But a lot of times, like, because he gets in on something so late, they don't even get him on IMDb. And it's like, he's like, I get paid for it. But a lot of times it's like he'll come in to correct something like 2 weeks before it goes to theater. And I think it's horrible that they release a movie theatrically, like without getting everybody's name in it. Now, he's probably in like probably 150 listings over the last 20 years. So he's getting listed as well, but there's once in a while. So that makes me think, and actually give you some insight on OSDB, Online Sports Database, is that even though like when we think of sports, we think of the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady's and the big names, but you know who this is important for? It's important for that assistant offensive coordinator who was on a Super Bowl team 3 years ago, but because the coordinator got let go the next year, he's freelance. So it's going to be able to like, oh, you're sitting down for a gig and I can go back and actually see where this person was, and it's all verified. So it's not only great for players and maybe some of those like borderline players that are practice squad guys and like can verify that they actually legitimately played the NFL, or this could be MLB. Like we're talking NFL now, but this can go bigger than that.
Yeah, and it could go down to college eventually too, and then maybe one day even high school. That's way down the road. But that whole verification is just our mousetrap. There's going to be a lot of other things on this site, like content, exclusive interviews, things of that nature as well.
That's a whole nother game. When it becomes a media company too, it's a whole nother game. Yeah, because IMDb has like the trailers and it's connected to all your local theaters. So it could be also connected to games, and there's so much you can do with it.
Actually, to your question earlier about how venture capital works, and that'll be that fork in the road that we all want to get to. Hey, we're blowing up. Do we have an offer from maybe a Comcast or an Amazon or a Facebook type of company to come buy us and put gasoline on the fire? Now we sold out. We're done. We know what they're going to do with it, with all this content. Or do we keep staying the course, doing what we're doing and do it ourselves? And that's the fork you want to get to in venture capital. That's that fork in the road.
Talk about the fork though, John. So what would it take? I'm just curious to pick your brain in particular. Let's say that does happen. Let's manifest right now. This thing blows up. It's going to be amazing, right? And Amazon comes to you, knock, knock, knock. We love this thing. We want to buy you guys out. When do you personally decide, no, this is my baby, I want to keep riding with it? Or when do you say, man, that's a nice chunk of change, I can go do something different?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a great problem to have, right? But in this particular case, in most cases like this too, I'm the first investor, and I'm also right now the largest investor. But as we raise money in the future, you're going to get institutional money behind it. Maybe some private equity money even behind it, where it's a fund where they're taking everyone else's money and putting it together. Right now, I'm the big guy on campus from an investor standpoint because I wrote a large check relative to the moment. Down the road, you get institutions involved. And at that point, the founders who I mentioned, Aaron, Ryan, and Nate, are always going to have a large say. They're going to hold board seats, okay? Mm-hmm. But a financial institution more than likely is also going to have board seats, and maybe even at that point, the majority shares in the company, depending on how much money we've raised, get in there. Even if the founders have this passion, hey, I love this, this is awesome, let's keep going, but there's a huge return on investment sitting over there for that financial institution with an exit to a Comcast, it's sometimes out of anyone's hand because they need to answer to the participants in their fund. So they can't do it because they like hanging out with Aaron.
Right. It's not a good enough reason. Yeah.
Exactly. They need to return capital to their shareholders in their fund. So
I bring it up because there's like this thing right now where like the Shark Tank show is really popular. And I feel like everybody's like creating an idea to sell the idea. And I don't know, for me, when I started my company, this is just my personal thing. And I know most millionaires have 7 streams of income. They got multiple companies. So once you have that going on, it's like having 7 kids. You take care of all of them. But for me, like having my podcast and having my company, Social Chameleon, I'm not thinking about just selling it so then someone could do something different with it, because I want to actually see this thing be that company, like the Universal Studios of making movies. I want Social Chameleon to be that company for building podcasts, right?
Yeah. You know what's interesting about you saying that, though, is some of these that are like, you have a path, right? Where you know where revenue is going to be coming from. You probably have a business plan where this company will be able to stand on its own two legs. A lot of companies like OSDB and really a lot of technology related companies in general don't have that path because so much money has to keep being put into technology that there's never really going to be dividends and everything for the investors until there's that exit. I'll give you an example. Not all venture capital plays are like that, though. Just ones like the one I just described happen to be, and they could get budget neutral and revenue neutral and make money, but the big payday still comes with that exit. I'm in another company with Jaleel White. You might know him from being Urkel back in the day on Family Matters. It's a cannabis business, but he's a really smart guy. He's a very good friend of mine. He's smart enough to know, hey, instead of raising tens of $1 millions and building all of our own facilities everywhere, let's do a joint venture and partner with an existing lab. So he has a deal set up with 710 Labs, who's a huge cannabis company in Los Angeles and now in other states. So we have a tight-knit group of investors involved in that, very small group, because we don't need to raise that kind of money. We could stand on our own 2 feet just simply on how we have that deal structured. And then when you got a founder that's not only smart like Jaleel, but also just is such a recognizable person, and we talk about the purple Urkel, it's called, and people like line up dying on the street. I'll be out to dinner with this guy, and we'll have like guys that just on the LA Rams that just won the damn Super Bowl asking to take pictures with him. It's just how it is. When you have a good product tied to that kind of exposure, it's a recipe for success. So really OSDB and it's purple, I'm hoping it's kind of that same formula with Aaron involved. Jaleel's a lot more hands-on than Aaron, but
everybody's different.
Yeah, exactly.
What I'm hearing from that, what I want our audience to internalize on that is that every situation's unique. You're not telling us every time this is how you evaluate the situation. No, sometimes it's you got a guy like Aaron and he's an idea guy behind it. You got Jaleel who's more hands-on because he's like connected to the business in a different way. You got some people who just, you mentioned, I think you called it dumb money, where they just invest and they want to play with my money and make double my money. Well, yeah, they're not going to every board meeting. And then you have strategic money, which you're willing to give up a little bit more for the strategy and the mindset and the know-how of the people like on Shark Tank, where, hey, I'm willing to give up 10% to Mr. Wonderful because he's built 12 of these businesses already. So I'm going to be number 13. So I'm saying all that to say something very, very simple is every situation's unique. And I'm learning that through you today, that it's not like blackjack where there's the right move every time. Maybe it is, but there's so many different business opportunities. You cannot narrow it down to like the dealer has a 6 and you have a 3, so you should hold. You know what I'm saying?
There's no basic strategy of venture capital. I love it. How do we not know each other already?
I don't know. I think we should maybe hit the strip or something.
Yeah, oh my God.
We got a couple minutes together, and this is what I want to do. And I did not know you're an author, and I did spend time preparing, so that somehow got through me. But I think it's awesome. And I always ask this question at the end. It's an opportunity for you to really open up and share a little bit more about your vision for yourself. And this is how it is. So you're the author and protagonist in your own life story, right? So think of it this way. You get to write the ending, God willing, and you continue to live a long, prosperous life. You're looking back, you're reflecting on it. Now you get to define your legacy. What would that be?
Wow, that's a great question, my friend. I'll tell you what, and I think my answer, and I'll just share with you something that I've been struggling with, especially really since I sold my company in 2015. My goal always was to build my insurance company, Northwest Comprehensive, also be a good father, a good friend, and I had a lot of personal goals with that too. But from a business standpoint, my goal was to have X amount of dollars to be in a position at least to retire at the age of 40. Okay. And I ended up selling my company at the age of 38. And where I had kind of set for myself dollar-wise where I needed to be, largely because of private equity getting into the insurance space and what I think they're all overpaying. It's like, I don't even know how they're paying us this much, but it put me in a position where instead of being here, I'm way up here. Okay. Now my goals and everything in my life had kind of been based on getting to that point. And then I far exceeded it. Okay.
And you're only 38, so you still have plenty of story to write.
Yeah. Well, I was 38 at the time. I'm 45 now. But
right.
yeah.
And even 45, I mean, God willing, again, you have plenty more years, right?
Now, you would think that over 7 years, I would have figured it out. But in my defense, for the next 5 years after I sold it, it was still head to the ground because I had to work for the company that bought mine. And to make sure I got all of that money, I needed to make sure certain things stayed in place and kind of worked my ass off during that time. So really, this is just 2 years that I've been in this little la-la land here, right? I'm happy with what I've done now with Glencrest Global in those 2 years. But how far I could take it, it's still to be determined, man. I got to tell you, I'm involved and where my goal should be as far as where I could take it. I'm extremely happy. If you would ask me 2 years ago where things are at and who I'm networking with and everything else, if you would have said to me 2 or 3 years ago, this is what I would be doing, no, I wouldn't have believed you. So I know I'm there. I got to figure out what that goal is for myself to do something like leaving a legacy and leaving my mark. Again, I have it from a personal standpoint. That's not what your show's about, but I have that defined from a personal standpoint. Well, from a business standpoint, now I've exceeded the goals I had previously set and need to figure out what that new standard should be. And I don't want to set it because I already screwed up once. I wanted to get here and I got here. I want to set it high enough where A, it's attainable, but B, not easily attainable.
You see people going the opposite way. They bring the target down so they can hit it. And then it feels good that everybody gets that trophy. And then if everybody's winning the Super Bowl, it doesn't have the same value anymore. So yeah, I love that. I love that you're setting these high goals for you. And I think it's amazing that you hit that at 38. And then something I don't want to just move past, you also for 5 years were head down because you were making sure that exit was smooth and you were giving them your time and energy to make sure that they didn't just buy something that you said, here's an envelope, there's the keys to the car, I'm out of here. And then they give you a briefcase with money. It doesn't work like that. Like you might think, when you're younger, like how a business transaction happens. You're working hard in it for still about 5 years. And now you got this 2-year period where you're like, all right, what's the next chapter or 3 or 5 or 10 chapters of my life going to look like? Something I don't know if you thought about this, I'm just telling you this as a friend, is you have those books that you hand out and you educate people and you inspire them. You're talking about starting maybe your own podcast or you're putting some stuff out on YouTube. I definitely see you shining when it's, of course, how much you earn and all the business success and OSDB being successful is going to be a big part of your legacy. But I also think it's going to be about those like one-to-one situations where people are like, because I've known John, my business is successful. And I think that's part of who you're going to be.
Thanks for saying that. I've really toyed with it quite a lot in terms of maybe making that more of a priority, quite honestly. And I started putting content out on Instagram. I'm not trying to be an influencer or a business coach or anything like that, but I just share different things on Instagram. And I've been getting a lot of DMs that kind of sing that tune. So I've been appreciating that. But I'm going to tell you what, as far as that legacy is concerned, remember earlier, I made the comment about, these venture capital firms. Oh, I was first in on Facebook. Oh, I was first in on LinkedIn. I was one of the early guys. Okay. If Jalil's company, it's purple, or if OSDB, hey, I was the first investor in OSDB and it sells for $2 billion one day. You know what I mean? That changes some trajectory as well. So that's kind of why I'm having such a hard time defining this stuff, man.
It's not something you have an answer. It's an active answer. It's changing all the time. And anyone tuning in, like your legacy isn't defined when you're 45 or in my case, 36 and you write it. You alter it all the time. You add to it. Maybe you change things that you thought were important to you, but now they're no longer that important to you. So you alter that. I got a couple more questions. Do you have a couple more minutes?
I do. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I told my next meeting that I may be a few minutes late because we're recording, and it's actually one of my employees. And he's like, dude, just let me know when we're talking. So I bought us a couple minutes of time just now. One question I didn't have prepared that kind of came to me because you played tight end, right? You played tight end at Notre Dame and Northwestern U. So if you, as you're dreaming, as you're a kid, even before you're playing college ball, every kid plays backyard ball who's any good at football, right? And you're playing with your buddies and you're shaking your head, yeah, for those listening. If you could, at that point in time, play tight end for any team and win a Super Bowl, what was your vision for yourself at that point?
As a kid?
Yeah, or even like kid and then college. What was your big dream there on the football field?
Well, I mean, that's too easy, Mike. Even though I'm in LA half the time or more than half the time now, I grew up in Chicago. And if you're from Chicago and you don't answer that question with the Bears, you need to move out. And I don't care that we haven't been good since probably 1990. Well, we've been okay, but we haven't won a darn Super Bowl since '85. And anybody, let me just tell you something, okay? Even though I'm business partners with Aaron Rodgers, doesn't mean I like the Packers. In fact, I love that he's leaving the Packers so I could actually cheer for him on Sundays now. All right? Let's just be very clear about this.
It's awesome. Okay, so you'd be winning the Super Bowl, hoisting the Lombardi, wearing that Bears. That's cool, man. Hey, I'm from Buffalo. I respect the Bears. I mean, we've had a long struggle for a long time, and we're finally on the up now. We're finally a team that people enjoy watching. We got an exciting quarterback. Really starts there in the NFL. And that's the thing with the Bears. I don't know if Fields is going to turn the corner, but until you really have that guy that the whole team is confident and the GM is confident in, like everything else kind of just, you could have a top 5 defense, but if you don't know what you're doing at quarterback in this NFL today, you really are hurting. That's why, like, the Packers are always in it because they have Aaron, and Tom Brady's teams are always in it because they have TB12, you know?
That's right. And I'm going to tell you what, I was just for the Super Bowl. I was in LA and I was at this party in Bel Air and Josh Allen was at it. It was a small event. And what a nice guy, man. What a nice guy. You guys really got a winner in Buffalo with him.
Yeah. We've had some nice guys in the past, but nobody plays a game like that guy. Like, he's a nice dude, but let's not forget what he's capable of. He's a warrior. I love him. And I admit I was wrong. I did not think that we took the right Josh during that draft. And the other Josh, I don't even think is in the league anymore, Josh Rosen. So
yeah, what was it? I don't even know.
I was wrong there, and many people were. But yeah, Josh Allen, and he's a dog. He's a Buffalo guy now. He's going to be a lifer, I think, in this town. Last question for you. Is there anything that I didn't bring up that maybe you came today and you're like prepared to talk about and really wanted to get a message out? Is there anything I didn't hit on yet?
No, I really think this was a great interview. And, you know, I'll tell you what, I think I would leave your audience with this remark from me. And it just kind of came to me as we were talking here, as I see the nature of, you know, what you're trying to project to your audience, or what you are projecting quite effectively, I should say. I had a $140,000 a year job. I was a very good salesperson. And there was a lot, 45. I quit that job when I was 27 years old, did my own company. And it was really the same exact job that I left. I just did it for myself, turned that 140 a year into a few million a year, and then eventually sold that company to a private equity backed competitor for a big multiple of that in the double digits. Okay. And I never stopped doing the same job. Had I worked at that same place in corporate America, I'm going to tell you what happened. I asked them for a raise not to go do this. I wanted to go up to 180. Best thing that ever happened to me was them not taking me up to 180 grand a year. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
If I would have stayed there, my best case scenario right now, I'd probably be making 400 grand or something like that. You know what I mean? And you know what? All I would have known, and life would have been just fine for me.
Yeah. That would be fantastic. But now you've got all this other experience that you can add to it. You're doing something with OSDB, which I'm excited to follow the success. And here's the exciting part, John. We're recording this. It's actually March 1st, 2022, as we're pressing the record button today. This will come out in a few weeks. But the cool thing is that by the end of this year, we don't know you and I are going to be involved, but there could be new opportunities that come like through our email inbox, and someone could pick up the phone and call us and say, I have an idea. And all of a sudden we're involved with something else. So that's a really cool part about it, is like, you don't know. My whole thing with getting out of corporate was just to be able to share my own story and have an impact more than just myself. Because I felt like I was a great salesperson and earning a good living for the family and stuff. And I was married at the time. I'm divorced now, but I have a beautiful daughter. And so it was not always about me. But now it's like, it's definitely not about me, but it's like, I want to impact more people. And if you're playing small ball, you can only really impact a couple people. And I don't think that I'm doing this world a service if I'm only helping out a couple, instead of like being able to do something on a greater scale. Like, we only get one shot on this planet. So I'm not thinking small anymore. And that's why I love the podcast. I know people can tune in from all around the world. So John, you have no idea how much I enjoyed the last hour with you. I did not know where it was going to go today. We never met. It could have went a million directions. It went all over the place in a sense, but in a good way. I want you to know that you got a friend here, and I really look forward to following your success. So where's home for you right now?
Half the time in Chicago, half the time in Los Angeles. But I'm a Chicago native, and I got a place in Los Angeles just because I had so much business out there, and I've gained a lot of friends out there too. So it's just
I do plan on doing it.
It's better weather. It's better weather, by the way.
Let me check. I can confirm that you're accurate. I have a ton of family out in California and friends, so I plan on doing, once and COVID finally seems to be like it's getting itself under control here and all that good stuff. I plan on doing a California tour. I keep talking about it when I reflect on the day in gratitude and I kind of meditate and stuff. I'm thinking of this California tour. So when I do it, you're going to be added to the tour.
Hey, I got a spot for you, man.
All right, John, thank you so much for your time today. And God bless, man. Keep fighting. I tell everybody 2 things right here. Be great and be grateful. I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/mikedup. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/mikedup. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mikeduppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCiccio, MIKEDICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.